Have you ever watched a team shoot itself in the foot before the race even starts? That's exactly what the Toronto Maple Leafs might be doing if they pull the trigger on trading Nick Robertson right now. I know. The kid's been inconsistent, he's been scratched, and the whispers around the league are getting louder by the day. But hold on a second, because NHL insider Nick Kypreos just dropped a take that's got everyone talking, and frankly, it might be the smartest thing anyone said about this situation all season. In a league where teams are constantly chasing the next shiny object, sometimes the best move is the one you don't make. So let's break down why keeping Robertson might actually be the Leafs' secret weapon moving forward. Here's the reality check that Toronto is facing right now, just 2 weeks into the 2025-26 season. They've got a serious roster management problem on their hands. And honestly, it's the kind of problem most teams would kill to have. We're talking about healthy scratches of legitimate NHL players who would be getting regular minutes on half the teams in this league. Take Kaye Jarnkrok, for example. The guy's already potted 3 goals this season. 3 goals. And yet he found himself watching from the press box recently when the Leafs brought Steven Lawrence back into the lineup. Think about that for a second. A productive forward who's contributing offensively is sitting out because there simply aren't enough spots to go around. That's not a knock on Jarnkrok's ability. It's a testament to how deep this Maple Leafs roster actually is. And it's about to get even more complicated. Scott Laughton is expected to return to the lineup sometime soon, which means Toronto's roster puzzle is going to become even more difficult to solve. The math just doesn't work anymore. You've got too many capable bodies and not enough jerseys to hand out on game night. Something's got to give, and that's where the Nick Robertson trade rumors have started heating up like a playoff overtime game. The 24-year-old winger has struggled out of the gate this season, and when you combine that with the roster crunch, it seems like the perfect storm for a trade, right? Ship him out, free up a roster spot, maybe get a draft pick or a depth piece in return, and move on with your life. Clean, simple, efficient. Except there's one massive problem with that logic, and Nick Kypreos is here to tell you exactly why. On a recent episode of the Real Kyper and Bourne show, Kypreos came out swinging with a take that probably made a lot of Leafs fans do a double take. His message was crystal clear and delivered with the kind of conviction that makes you sit up and pay attention. Toronto should not trade Nick Robertson. Period. End of discussion. I'm not trading Nick Robertson. Kypreos stated emphatically, why do you want Nick Robertson being traded? What are you trading him for? There is no reason right now that you should just give Nick Robertson away. Now, before you dismiss this as just another hot take from a talking head trying to generate controversy, let's actually examine the substance behind his argument. Because when you peel back the layers, what Kypreos is saying makes a whole lot of sense, especially when you consider what Toronto would realistically get in return for Robertson right now. The market for a struggling young forward who's been inconsistent isn't exactly robust. At best, the Leafs might fetch a 4th-round pick or maybe a depth player who doesn't move a needle in any meaningful way. Is that really worth giving up on a player who still has legitimate upside and addresses specific needs on your roster? Kypreos doesn't think so, and honestly, neither should anyone else who's thinking beyond the immediate moment. Here's where Kypreos really drives his point home, and it's the part of his argument that should have every Leafs fan nodding along in agreement. When you break down what Robertson actually brings to the table, you start to realize that trading him might be solving one problem while creating several others. You're giving up depth, Kypreos explained. A 4th-round pick would be useless to me. He makes my team faster. My team gets slower when he leaves. He's still young, he's energetic, he's fast, he can still shoot a puck. Let's unpack that for a moment, because every single point matters. First, the speed factor. In today's NHL, speed kills. It's the currency that wins games, creates scoring chances, and tilts the ice in your favor. Robertson brings legitimate wheels to the Maple Leafs lineup. When he's on the ice, he can stretch defenses, create separation, and generate offensive opportunities through pure velocity. You trade him away, and suddenly your lineup gets a little slower, a little less dynamic, a little less dangerous on the rush. Is that really what Toronto wants? Second, the youth and energy component. Robertson is 24 years old. He's not some aging veteran clinging to the tail end of his career. He's in his prime athletic years with room to grow and develop. That kind of youthful energy is infectious in a locker room. And it's the type of asset that championship teams covet, not discard. But here's the kicker, and it's the most important part of Kypreos' argument. Robertson can flat out shoot the puck. We're not talking about a guy who occasionally gets lucky. We're talking about a player with an elite-level shot that can beat NHL goaltenders clean. That's a skill you can't teach. And it's a skill that becomes increasingly valuable as the season progresses and games get tighter. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room that makes keeping Robertson even more critical. Mitch Marner is gone. The Leafs lost one of their most prolific offensive weapons during the offseason, and while they made some moves to address that departure, there's no getting around the fact that Toronto's offensive firepower took a significant hit. Everyone and their grandmother is expecting the Maple Leafs offense to drop off this season. It's a narrative that's been building since the moment Marner left town. And you know what? That expectation isn't unfounded. Losing a player of Marner's caliber creates a void that's incredibly difficult to fill. So the question becomes, how do you offset that loss? Toronto brought in Dakota Joshua, Nicholas Roy, and Matthias Maxelli during the summer, and sure, those are solid additions. They bring different elements to the table and should help the team in various ways. But let's be brutally honest here. None of those guys immediately jump off the page as players who are going to replace Marner's offensive production. They're complementary pieces, not primary scorers. That's where Robertson becomes absolutely crucial. Despite his inconsistency and despite not evolving into the star that some predicted, the kid has still managed to score 14 and 15 goals over the past 2 seasons respectively. Those aren't superstar numbers, but they're legitimate contributions from a depth forward. And when you're trying to make up for the loss of a player like Marner, you need every goal you can get from every source possible. Robertson has shown flashes of brilliance throughout his young career. There have been games where he looks like he could be a legitimate top 6 winger in this league, where his shot is unstoppable and his speed creates havoc. The problem hasn't been the ceiling. It's been his consistency. He just needs to find a way to bring that A game more regularly. And maybe, just maybe, the solution has been staring Toronto in the face this whole time. Here's the thing that drives me absolutely crazy about this whole situation. Robertson hasn't really been given a legitimate shot to succeed in an ideal role. He's been bounced around the lineup, played with different line mates, and never really had the chance to build chemistry with elite offensive players who could help unlock his potential. Right now, the Maple Leafs are still trying to figure out the perfect winger combinations for both their top 2 lines. Austin Matthews and Matthew Knies need a right side complement. John Tavares and William Nylander could use another scoring threat. Why not give Robertson an extended look on one of those lines and see what happens? Think about it logically. If you put Robertson alongside elite playmakers who can get him the puck in dangerous areas, you might finally see the player that Toronto drafted and developed. His shot is NHL caliber. His speed is NHL caliber. He just needs the right situation to put it all together consistently. And if it works, congratulations, you've just found a cost-controlled scoring winger who addresses a major need without giving up any assets. And if it doesn't work, well, then you can revisit the trade conversation with a clear conscience, knowing you gave the kid every possible opportunity to succeed. At that point, if he still hasn't figured it out, then fine. Explore the trade market and see what's available. But making that move now, when you have exhausted all internal options, would be premature and potentially disastrous. Look, I get the temptation to make a move. General managers feel pressure to do something, especially when roster crunches create awkward situations and trade rumors start swirling. But sometimes the best move is the patient one. Sometimes you need to take a breath, evaluate what you actually have, and resist the urge to make a change just for the sake of making a change. Nick Robertson represents speed, youth, scoring ability, and depth, all things the Maple Leafs desperately need this season. Trading him for pennies on the dollar right now would be selling low on an asset that still has significant upside. Kypreos is absolutely right when he says there's no reason to just give Robertson away, and Toronto's management would be wise to listen. Give the kid a real opportunity with quality line mates. Let him play his way into or out of the lineup based on performance in an ideal situation. If he thrives, you've solved the problem without spending any assets. If he struggles, you can make the trade later without any regrets. Either way, you've made the smart, patient decision instead of the reactionary one. So what do you think? Should the Leafs hold on to Robertson and give him one more real shot? Or is it time to move on? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button. And let me know what other Leafs topics you want to dive into next.